भूतगणाधिसेवितं कपित्थजम्बूफलसारभक्षणम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारकम् नमामि विघ्नेश्वरपादपङ्कजम् मङ्गलं भगवान् विष्णु मङ्गलं गरुडध्वज मङ्गलं पुण्डरीकाक्ष मङ्गलाय तनो हरिः ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति।
Taking some time to sit in a comfortable position. Relaxing the feet and the legs into the ground. Feeling the spine, the sense of elongation and lightness. You can invite some very gentle movement at the level of the spine, just to make sure that it's not locked anywhere, that it remains fluid. And then that the head is almost floating on it. Relaxing the arms, the hands, and the fingers. Bringing the attention at the level of the face and letting it becoming smooth without any tension, as if in deep sleep. And letting the breath breathe freely. And paying attention for a few minutes at that movement of the breath. That movement that can be used during the practice as a way to bring ourselves back when we are distracted. A constant, gentle reminder of the inner direction we're taking. But regarding the breath, more specifically, asking the question and observing, are you doing it? At the end of the exhale, a new inhale. At the end of the inhale, a new exhale. This movement that occurred since the first day of your birth continues. Are you in charge? Or is breath breathing spontaneously, intelligently, perfectly? Feeling the heartbeat now. With the same question, are you doing that? Are you in charge, in control? Feeling the whole body. With this huge amount of activities right now. Cell dividing, digestion, hair growing. By itself. A continuous gift of the divine, our life. Pay attention now to the sounds, noticing sounds far away and sounds very close. But paying attention specifically to the capacity for hearing. As soon as a sound occurs, we hear it without effort, without even intent. It hears. And asking again the question, am I doing that? Or am I on the receiving end? A grateful witness of a mystery. The same exploration at the level of the mind. Thoughts are arising. Do we have any control on the type of thought that arises? Looking very closely at our experience, can we make sure a type of thought never comes? Are we in charge of what thought takes form in our consciousness? Or is it like the movement of the breath? And like hearing the sound? The flow, spontaneous, mysterious. And during this whole time, something is aware of everything. Aware of the body, the sounds, the hearing, the movement of the breath, the observing of it. Something that remained still, that pervaded the whole experience. Getting in touch with and resting in the vast presence of awareness. And asking the question, am I doing that? And as we continue the practice, we can keep this gentle questioning. Am I the maker of this? Am I in control? And each time we say no, it is like a bow, a recognition. When the doer bows, the divine shines. That bow is the arising of trust, awe, and gratitude. None of it is my doing. None of it is my will. And I simply bow to thee. And we'll continue now in silence to dissolve into trust and gratitude. Any sense of doership, any sense of me in this meditation as a continuous bowing. And that's it.
Start video. Yes. Hello. Mute session.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for your beautiful meditation. Now, we'll be very happy to welcome Swami Padmanabhananda ji. But first of all, Mahendra ji has prepared a short video of Ananda Ashram. Swamiji right now is not going to be speaking from Shivananda Ashram, but he has returned to his home state in Kerala. And he is visiting the ashram of Papa Ramdas called Ananda Ashram. And I think many of you know there's been a long connection from the time of Gurudev between Papa Ramdas Ashram and Shivananda Ashram. There's the connection from the time of Gurudev and the saints of our ashram right up to our Swami Padmanabhananda ji and Swami Muktananda ji. So I am not sure if this video is actually being shown or not. Now it's coming. Now it's coming. I wonder if it's their Samadhi hall. But I do know on the left-hand side is, yes. Perhaps it is. On the left, that's Swami Satchidananda. It's the spiritual successor of Krishna Bhai Mataji. Papa Ramdas, the person that sent it there. And Mataji Krishna Bhai, she's here to the right. Many of you would have visited this ashram. You can see their glowing faces. Thank you very much. Haryom Swamiji, can you see me? Anyways, we are very, very happy to welcome you, Swamiji, to our Christmas retreat, and that you were able to speak to us all the way from your home state, Kerala. I hope you're keeping well. So very much warm welcome to you, Swamiji. We're all very much looking forward to your talk. I gave more of an introduction already in the orientation meeting, so I won't take any of your wonderful talk time. So welcome, Swamiji. very happy to see you.
So, can I take over now? Yes. Oh. Om Shri Guru Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Guru Namaha. Om Ganapataye Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatye Namaha. Om Gananam Tva Ganapati Gungavamahe. Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam. Yashtadajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata. Anashriman Udivisi Sadanam. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murtaye. Prabhajaya Shantaya. Nilalambaya Tejase. Om Syatmabhudasya Gurupradadat. Aham Vimuktasmi Samsara Bandat. Sarvopadeshpi Shivananda Murte. Mritam Yukmam Ranadasmi Nityam. Yasindum Dina Bandhum. Shastrat Tabodana Patum. Kedindra Badam Novi. Chidananda Guru. Om Pranidam Dukka Bhattaru. Jnanado Bhuvanamuktaye. Shivananda Chidanandu Asraye Vidusattamu. Om Shantatmanam Pranadasulabham. Siddha Vidya Prabhavam. Vaswadrupam Sugunadiliyam. Karma Adivargam. Prajnavrittam Nidhi Samadrisham. Dadadam Tyagividyam. Sakshat Yesham Guruvaram. Shivanandam Nadosmi. Shivanandam Nadosmi. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram 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 Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. I pronounce to the holy feet of Reverend Papa, Mataji and Swami, and Gurudev Swami Shivanji Maharaj, Swami Chirandi Maharaj, and Swami Krishnandi Maharaj, and to everyone who are attending this online program and the physical program here at this Ashram. So, pronounce to everyone. So, Swami Amritarupananda, Mataji has already told I am not in Sivananda Ashram, now I am in Ananda Ashram. Ananda Ashram, Papa's Ananda Ashram. So from here I will share you some of my thoughts on Bhagavad Gita. Already a small clip has been shown to you. I came here for a program here. 27th December, on 27th December 1921, Puja Papa had his sannyas diksha. So the ashram is celebrating a year-long celebration, centenary celebration of our sannyas diksha, with a sankalpa to make an in-depth study of his book, In Quest of God, which he wrote during his wandering period, when he was wondering what practices what spiritual practices he has to do, what spiritual practices he had to encounter. Those things he has mentioned in that book. So they are making it into study because that may be useful for all the seekers who came here for that purpose and then study for the functions. So this was retreat program today. My date is 28th. So the topic as given is the liberating power of Bhagavad Gita in daily life. However, I will share some of my thoughts on Bhagavad Gita and the liberation as it is mentioned in the Shastra. Bhagavan Shankaracharya, in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, in his introduction, he says, what the Gita contains, what is dealt with in Bhagavad Gita. So he says, Tadidam Gita Shastram, Samasta Vedartha Sara Sangraha Bhutam. Shankaracharya says that this Gita contains the essence of the teachings of the Vedas. What is told in the Vedas, that he has condensed, Bhagavan Sri Krishna has condensed in 700 slokas, which have been written later by Bhagavan Vyasa in his Mahabharata. So he says, Tadidam Gita Shastram, Samasta Vedartha Sara Sangraha Bhutam. So it is the Sara, it is the essence of the Vedic teachings. Gita contains that. So Veda has been condensed like a capsule, it has been brought in Gita. And what Veda says, what is the content of the Veda? What are the essential teachings in the Veda? So that also Shankaracharya in his introduction says, Divido hi Vedokto Dharmaha, Pravritti Lakshanascha, Pravritti Lakshano Nivritti Lakshanascha. So Veda speaks about two dharmas. Divido hi Vedokto Dharmaha, two types of dharma. One is Pravritti Lakshanaha, the other is Nivritti Lakshana. I think those who are here, they all understand what is Pravritti. Pravritti means action. And Nivritti means absence of action. No action, renunciation. So the Veda speaks about two types of dharmas, Pravritti Lakshano, Nivritti Lakshana. So it speaks about Pravritti and it speaks about Nivritti. Then why should it speak about that? Then he says, Jagataha Sthiti Karanam Praninam Sakshati
Apyudaya Nishraya Hetuhu. So this Pravritti Lakshana and Nivritti Lakshana is told essentially to keep this activity, the world going actually. Bhagavan has created this, he has made a Srishti. That Srishti should go on. Suppose if you you put a seed and some plant comes, then we want to see that it exists. It bears fruit, it bears flowers. So, in order to maintain this universe, what he has created, Jagataha Sthiti Karanam, what has been created in order to sustain that, maintain that, these two dharmas are told. Pravritti Lakshana and Nivritti Lakshana. These two dharmas are told for that purpose. And also he says, Praninam Sakshat Apyudaya Nishrayasa. Nishraya Hetuhu. And these two dharmas are for Apyudaya and Nishraya. Abhyudaya, many of you may be knowing Abhyudaya. Abhyudaya means prosperity, plenty, richness. Apyudaya Hetuhu, Nishraya Hetuhu. Nishrayas, Abhyudaya and Nishrayas means highest good. Abhyudaya means good. Plenty. Everything should be plenty here. You want everything plenty here. You want plenty of food. You want everything plenty here. Ashram should go well. We need comforts. So it's a common desire. You want some good food to eat, and then good bed to sleep, and a good place to walk around. So there's a natural desire, not only in us, even in the plants, they want to have good light and good food from the soil. If the soil is not yielding, giving good food, the plant will die. So it will try to put the roots where water is there, where it can get food. So that's why he has used the word pranina. That does not mean human beings, even the animals. The animals will walk miles. If summer season comes, if there is no water here, the animals know where the water is, they will go. They will migrate. The trees will go like this, the coconut trees. For the sake of light, it goes like this. And they want plenty of light. If there is some problem here, it will go this side. So there is a natural tendency in everyone here. In all things here, all living beings, they want to be happy here. In order to be happy, they need certain essential things. They want food, they want shelter, they want some creature comforts. So all these things put together is Apyudaya. So Veda speaks about Apyudaya Dharma, what Dharma you should follow, so that everything will be plenty here. You will be able to enjoy that. You will be happy here. And then it says, it also speaks about the highest good. Renunciation means it's not that throwing away everything. Renunciation means everything is fine. Above that, transcending these things, there is a much higher ananda. If up to the plenty, richness, if everything is plenty, if there is prosperity, if you are happy, is there anything higher than this? A better happiness is there. Is there more happiness possible? Then they say, yes, prosperity is needed to be happy. Everything should be plenty. But beyond this, there is something which will make you more happy. So that is word Nishraya. All these things cannot be translated into English or any other language. So these words have been used by the rishis with a lot of import of meaning. And by constant use of that, you get to know what does it mean actually. So the Veda speaks about the two dharmas, pravritti lakshana dharma, the activities, action, so that you earn everything, you become rich. Rich not only in money, rich in flora, rich in fauna, everything rich here. Water should be rich, the air should be good, our fire should be good, the cow should yield well, the tiger should look very beautiful. Tiger looks beautiful. So if a small baby goes and show you you take him to a zoo, looks at the tiger and smile, enjoy it actually. I want to touch it. So everything is beautiful here. So everything we want to have richness in everything. Don't think sannyasi is actually throwing away everything. That's the wrong concept actually. It is something higher than that. So that richness is that plenty, prosperity and plenty. Let everything be plenty here. Everything be prosperous. So this is a famous mantra. Urdhvam jigadu beshajam samno dupate sam chatuspate. The other day I quoted. Let all the trees grow well. Let there be rich flora. Let everything be green here. God's own country, they call it Kerala. So everything is green, so beautiful. And all good flowers and nice aroma. So everything should be plenty here. Let there be rich growth of flora. And let there be fauna be rich. Let there be good cattle, plenty of cattle, plenty of wild animals. So you look at an elephant, you get a joy. Everyone looks at the elephant, especially Kerala, people are mad about elephants. They go and do Chanda, they will also do keep like this. So the elephant they enjoy. The elephant looks so beautiful. So let there be plenty of everything. Everything should be plenty here. So the pravritti lakshana is to have prosperity. Prosperity means all our needs are met with. And everything is plenty here. That is required actually. You can't have starving. Veda does not speak about starvation. Everything should be. It's not my statement. It is what I say from the quote of Shankaracharya. That's why I have written and brought it here. In the introduction to the Gita, he says, and later elsewhere also it is told. So two types of dharmas are there: pravritti lakshana and nivritti lakshana. Nivritti lakshana dharma. Nivritti lakshana is highest good. And the word dharma also you should understand. Dharma is not doing some charity. Dharma means something which is inherent in a thing, something which is innate in a thing, without which it cannot exist. That is the dharma. Dharma means not doing charity. That means that's not the real meaning. The real meaning of dharma is a natural state without which it cannot exist. For example, fire has to be, should give you heat. Fire should be hot. When you touch it, it will burn you. Water will be cool. Water is cool. That is its dharma. Fire is hot. That is its dharma. The water flows down. It is dharma. From higher regions to lower regions, it will flow. That is the dharma of the water. Fire will go up. That is the dharma. The earth has got a smell. When it rains, then you get the smell of the earth. So it is its dharma. It is its quality. So that is dharma. If it is not there, if water starts flowing upwards, the fire is very cold. You cannot cook food. So if that dharma is not there, it is no more, that product is no more there. That object is not there. So that is actually the word meaning of dharma. Dharma means because of that innate quality, inherent nature, it exists. Otherwise, it will not exist. It cannot exist. It cannot have that name. So he speaks about pravritti lakshana dharma and nivritti lakshana dharma. What is pravritti? Action. So he speaks about to act, how one has to behave. So we are all living beings, whichever is born here. We are involved in some activity. Everything is active here. The trees are growing. You are growing, trees are also growing. You are eating, the trees are also eating. The dog eats, the trees eat. The ant eats, we eat. So, and in order to eat, we work, we do something. You want to be happy, the dog also wants to be happy. You want a good bed, the dog also wants good bed. The dog make a small pit and then sleeps there. So in order to be comfortable, in order to be happy, so all these things here, they are involved in an activity, in some activity, so that they will be happy. Every one of us, everything here, whatever is born here, they are functioning. They are involved in some form of activity so that they will be happy. So that pravarti is there. All pravarti, all action, all your actions are for the sake of enriching yourself, for the sake of acquiring comforts, to be happy here. All our activities to make our life prosperous. Abhyudaya motivates us to work for it. Abhyudaya can only bring everything. Plenty means you become happy. I want this. How much you want? You give everything to me. Everything I want here. So you want how much? How much land? Oh. Whatever possible you give. So we all want to be happy. We want to be rich. We want to have everything. So for that we are working actually. So all our activities, all our movements, all our thoughts, not physical activity, even the mental thoughts, intellectual thinking, all these activities, all the pravartis are for Abhyudaya, to make us rich, rich in all respects, rich in thinking, rich in comforts, rich in our interaction with everybody. My children should love me much. I should have good relationship with all people here. Everyone should love me. I hate you if someone says you don't like it. I love you. Oh, very good. Swami, you are a wonderful person. Yes. So we all feel that way, you know. So you want everything rich. Don't confine richness means money. Everything you want to reach. Everybody should accept me. You want everybody to accept you. Oh, you have done a good work. You are very happy. That was, you sang very well. Yes, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji. No, Hari Om, Swamiji. So we have that pravarti there. For that, they have prescribed a dharma. So, because action is inevitable, you cannot remain without activity. Activity is a part of our life. Without activity, we cannot exist. So, If somebody wants to, I don't want to do any activity, I'll remain quiet. It is not possible. You cannot remain quiet. You will be doing something or other. So without action, renunciation of action and all these things are imaginary words. It is not possible. You will be acting. So we are all involved in some form of activity. Always we are active. Something or other we are doing all the time. And that should be governed by a certain law. That should have a dharma. That should be the pravritti should have its dharma. If you violate its dharma, then it will create problem for you. If, as I told you, that's why the water will flow down. The water started going up. The sea water swells up. The Kerala will be submerged. So water should maintain its dharma. Likewise, all the activities, pravrittis, should be according to a certain dharma that is called pravritti dharma. And beyond that, transcending that, there is another one which is called nivritti. So nivritti is something which is superior to, which brings the highest good actually. This is good, it's very good actually. But that is something, the most high, the most good. That is how it is used in the West. So two types of dharmas are spoken in this. So what is this dharma? That I will come to this now. So what for we are, why we are active? Why you are engaged in action? Why you do something? To do something, to get involved in an action, there should be some push actually. You won't do any activity unless there is some result. So you go there and come. I say, you go there and come. It's only Papa can go there and come, go there and come. Papa can only do that. Otherwise, you go there. Why should I go? What for you are sending me there to go? What for? Nothing. Nothing means why should I go? So you won't go. Only Papa will go. You go. Ram says, I will go. Ram says, you come. Otherwise, suppose if I say you go, you won't go. Why should I go? So all the actions we do, perform, has got a purpose. What is that purpose? The purpose means we want to enrich ourselves. All our activities are to enrich ourselves, to make our life more prosperous, to make it more plenty. So all activities are to acquire something. Acquisition. I want more food. Then grow more food. Annam bahu kurvita. There's a Vedic mantra. Produce more anna. Anna does not mean the right cooked rice. Anna means everything is rice. Whatever that is being taken as food here. What we eat, somebody else eats something else. The cow eats something, the dog eats something. All these things should be rich. Annam bahu kurvita. Sadvratam tasmat yaya kaya cha vidaya bahvannam prapnuyat. The Veda mantra, Upanishad mantra. So let there be growth, let there be rich growth of food. You make it. So whenever we are involved in activity, all actions succeed a desire for. All actions are to acquire something, to achieve something. And there is a desire to achieve it. Lot of pain is there. Do you want? No, I don't want. Lot of pressure is there. Yes, please give me. So all our activities of all activities are succeed a desire. So that desire is called in Sanskrit as kama. So the desire is for some material, some comfort. It can be house, it can be son, it can be a daughter, it can be a wife, it can be money, it can be land, it can be, I want a good cow, I want a good elephant, I want good trees, I want good yield in my crops. And there should not be any mosquito here. All are desires only. So all desires are centered on objects which will make us, which will give us comfort. So our desires are to acquire objects which can make us happy. So that is also, there are the positive side and the negative side. We want certain objects which will make us happy. We don't want certain objects which will make us unhappy. So we want to get rid of those objects. So we want to acquire certain objects and we want to get rid of some other objects. Both are there. So something we like, we want to have it. Something we don't like, we want to get rid of it. For that purpose, activities happen. So this, they say, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Artha, kama is there. Two things are there. Artha means all objects which will make us happy. Either the acquisition will make us happy or renunciation of that will make us happy. Throwing away, getting rid of that will make us happy. And that desire is there. That desire only prompts us, makes us to do the activity. The desire only makes us to do that. So now they say, this should not disturb your acquisition. You are enriching yourself. When you earn your prosperity, when you go for your prosperous life, when you are involved in your activity to acquire something and to make you rich, do not disturb other things here. Do not disturb the happiness of other things here. You can earn as much as you want. Everything you can earn without disturbing the other thing. I want money, I should not steal your money. I should not rob you of your money to make me rich. I want food. Your food is kept there, I take away and then eat, and then you don't have food. That's not correct. That will disturb you. When you are disturbed, you will disturb me. Because here everything is connected to everything here. We have a wrong notion that we are independent. Nothing is independent here. It is one organic whole. You are intimately connected to me. Everything here is intimately connected to me. Everything is intimately connected to you. Everything is intimately connected to everything other. Every other thing. So all are interconnected here. So my earning, my comforts, my happiness should not disturb the happiness of the other person. If it disturbs, that will disturb you. Because you are disturbing yourself. You are intimately connected to. You have a knife. You want to see whether it is sharp. You want to cut it. You can't cut your finger. You don't test it here. So likewise, if you earn your happiness, disturbing the happiness of other thing, it is like cutting your own finger to test whether the knife is sharp or not. So that is what is called pravritti dharma. Artha kama, the kama, your kama. Kama does not mean, the Malayalam meaning is not correct. Kama means desire. Kama is Malayalam also same thing. Kama means desire. Your desires are perfectly okay. You can desire for anything and achieve it also. But to see that it does not disturb the other person. So that is the dharma. Pravritti dharma. So it speaks about pravritti dharma. You are earning your objects to make you happy, to enrich yourself, to become prosperous in life. Do not disturb the other person. Do not disturb anything here. You should not even disturb water. You should not even disturb fire. There is a Veda mantra which says that you should not spit in water. In our ashram, in Shivananda ashram, there was one Swamiji whose name was Muktananda, not our Swamiji Muktananda, that Canadian, a tall fellow, very big size. So he hails from Canada. It's a very cold country. So and when hot season, summer season, he used to stay in the ashram. So he will go to Ganga, which is very cool, water is very cool. He will swim there for 2-3 hours. And we cannot stay there for more than 1 minute. It is very cold, he will come out, ice melting. But he will be there for hours together. And he used to go and study with one Swamiji called Swami Brahmanandaji. So one day he went there and somebody told him, Swamiji Muktananda is swimming in the river. Then Swamiji told, you should not swim in the river. Ganga, you should not swim, he said. He cannot understand what it is. He cannot understand, but he simply obeyed Swamiji's command. You should not disturb, you should not swim in river. That is prohibited. You are disturbing. Some of our mommies may be knowing when the girls walk, tap, 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 like that. Hey, don't disturb the earth, they used to say. Bhumiya kulukade. Those days they used to say. You can't jump on this. You cannot go like this. Don't disturb this Mother Earth. Nowadays, the girls might not cannot be told like that. They will not like it. And the mommies will not tell that also. So nothing should be disturbed here. Everything. So you should feel that everything is connected to you. Even if you don't feel that you are denying a truth, the effect will be there. You believe that the fire will be not burn you and put your finger there. Whatever you believe, whatever you think, whatever your rationality, the fire will burn your finger. So this is pravritti lakshana. While you earn whatever you want, while you achieve your happiness, you acquire your happiness, do not disturb anything here. And you follow that dharma. That dharma is called karma yoga. Two things are told here. That is, one is yoga and sannyas. Yoga and tyaga. Lokesmin dvidanishta pura proktamaya jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yogina. This is yoga. Yoga means not the hatha yoga. Yoga according to the Bhagavad Gita and according to the Shastras also, yoga means karma yoga. Discharging one's functions, duties. All actions should be performed without disturbing the other thing. Because you are intimately connected to everything here, you should not disturb anything. So that is what is called yoga, karma yoga. And what is Sankhya? Kamyanam karmanam nyasam sanyasam kabayo viduhu. So the activities are prompted by desires, because some desire is there in the mind. Some desire is there in the mind. Up to what time? 11:15. Some desire is there in the mind. We have to necessarily act. Activities. Without activity, it is not possible. So activities will be there. There are desires, there are karma is there, the karma will be there. Kama is the mother, karma is the child. Avidya kama karma. Kama is there. I want this. Then you have to do the activity. So you root this. All the pravarti should be according to pravarti lakshana dharma. What dharma you have to follow. That is what is called karma yoga. And what is Sankhya? If the mind is free of desires, then also you will be active. In that case, what you do, then also you acquire, you achieve everything. And that is that you don't feel, you don't have a possession over that. You don't have a feeling it is mine. The mindness will not be there. So ashram is there. Ashram is rich means who is rich? Ashram rich means not, Muktananda Swamiji is not rich. Ashram is rich means ashram is rich. So he has no abhimana over that. He has no feeling of it is mine, that feeling is not there. That I-ness is not there. Ego is not there. Without specific desire, any specific desire, whatever activity we do, that is, Papa says, all the actions are consecrated to Ram. Whatever God prompts, that activity naturally takes place. It takes place in the activity takes place. So that activity, it is not because of some desire from within. It is a prompting from God. So accordingly they act. So that act is not act, it is tyaga, because kama tyaga is already there. So tyaga means sannyasa. Sannyasa means tyaga. What is the tyaga? The mind will not entertain any desire. Whatever it is provided is fine. It's Ram's will. Papa says when it is Ram's will, the will of Ram. So I don't have any will or wish or desire. Whatever he makes me do through this instrument, it is fine for me. Whether it is good or bad, that thought is not there. That is what is called Nivritti Lakshana. So one Pravarti Lakshana, the other is Nivritti Lakshana. Pravarti Lakshana will bring Abhyudaya. You will be comfortable here. Everything will be plenty here. It will bring you prosperity. And Nivritti Lakshana will take you beyond prosperity. Nivritti Lakshana does not mean poverty. It is takes poverty or prosperity, it makes no difference. Poverty and prosperity does not matter to us. So because you have transcended that condition, you are in a state of bliss all the time. Why this is said? Because initially the Shastra says you are divine. You are basically divine. Everything here is Bhagavad Swarupa only. His Vishwarupa, his Virat Swarupa only What we see here is his Virat Swarupa. So whatever I see here, it is his form. All the names and all the forms are Ram only. Papa says Ram only. All the names or all the forms are Bhagavan Swarupa only. One who can behold that. For him, neither the comfort is also Ram, the stress is also Ram, the pain is also Ram. Sukha dukkhe samekritva labha labho jaya jayo. All these things are the Sukha and Dukkha are equal to me. Labha and alabha, nashta, all are equal. So that is Nivritti Lakshana. So these two are there. And already we are all liberated souls only. There is some error in our this what is called computer, this computer here. So that is artificial intelligence, there is some error. The connection has not been properly made, so some error is there. That is why we are seeking liberation, already liberated. So that is we are not achieving liberation. We are not going to get liberation. Liberation is already there. Somehow there is a wrong notion that we are bound. Your base, your nature is Ananda, your Ananda Swarupa. Ananda, your Swarupa is Ananda. Where is Dukkha? It is a dream actually. It is an imagination. So, just to bring you back to your real, that it says some forgetfulness is there. You have forgotten your real nature. And to make you understand your real nature, the Shastra speaks about that. So the liberation is for the liberated one only and not for those who are bound actually. So your Swarupa is Ananda. This is Ananda Ashram. Your Swarupa is Ananda. And we have a song, Anandoham, Anandoham, Anandam Brahmanandam. Your Swarupa is Ananda. So that is promised in Bhagavad Gita. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay. 5 minutes actually. Mataji, okay.
Hari Om, Swamiji. That was such a beautiful talk, Swamiji. I feel so inspired.
I could not see you. You come in the frame.
Oh, can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a beautiful talk. I feel so inspired by that. You even made, desire-induced activity inspiring. It reminded me a little of the golden rule, but you opened it up and made it so profound for us.
Okay.
That is the desire-induced activity, let alone when we are able to act without any desire. That liberation you spoke about. I feel very inspired, very, very touched by your talk, Swamiji. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody loved it. And we'll see you later on this evening, Swamiji, for your questions and answers.
All the questions are technical questions they have asked.
Sorry?
All questions are technical questions on Gita.
Yes. Well, more questions may come after your talk.
Okay.
So as soon as they come, we'll send them to you.
How did he give? Okay, thank you. So
Yeah.
I can leave.
Yes, you can leave, Swamiji, and thank you so much for the really beautiful and inspiring talk. Hari Om to all of you. Welcome back and thank you for coming. I am sorry I'm a little late. I came down from my room to the yoga hall and then I have found it a little difficult to orient myself to my own talk after Swami Padmanabhananda's talk, which was so inspiring. But I'll do my best. I'm glad I'm with family. So you'll forgive any lapses that may happen. Anyways, we will continue with our theme, the liberating power of the Bhagavad Gita in daily life. And just to put in a nutshell what was spoken about yesterday, we really saw how just one verse, one simple verse, can have the power to liberate us from the turmoil that we may find ourselves in from time to time throughout our spiritual life. And if it can liberate us from that kind of turmoil, it can liberate us from any kind of turmoil. And you'll recall that verse is verse 22 from chapter 14, where Lord Krishna is describing the sage who is the same whether sattva, rajas, or tamas is present. In other words, when those three are present, he hates them not. And if they go, and when they go, he longs for them not. He is the same. And as mentioned yesterday as well, it's a very challenging verse, because to be the same no matter what our experience is really so totally different from the way our normal relationship to experience is, which is one of intense like and dislike, love and hate, wanting and not wanting. Particularly if there's a beautiful experience we want, and if there's painful experiences we don't want. So it's a very challenging verse. And yet, if we can allow it into our heart, as you say, it can be profoundly liberating. And that usually happens after some time, after we've experienced enough turmoil throughout our spiritual life. And this is, of course, not for all, but for some, we've experienced enough turmoil throughout our life. And we've tried every practice to get rid of it. And finally, we've given up. There's now an openness, whereas Swamiji had said, man's extremity is God's opportunity. And we're willing to let in this possibility, and this possibility that maybe whatever is there, whether it is painful or whether it's beautiful, it's okay. It's not a problem. Before I thought it was a problem, these things shouldn't be there. And so I wanted to get rid of it. But if the sage is the same, if our true self is the same, which is the godly principle in us is the same, then maybe it is okay. And we start to let that in. And if we really start to believe this voice, then as mentioned yesterday, it's like a release happens, and we begin perhaps to feel have an inner feeling of freedom and of peace. And one of the important things when that happens is that we don't stop there, and then convert that into something that we want. But it's like it is a beautiful gift given to us from God, that inner space that we can experience. To take our inquiry or take our devotion, or if we follow the yoga synthesis as Gurudev teaches, take both of them deeper. So first of all, in order to do that, and it is necessary if we want to become established in the same consciousness is the sage, which is really what has happened when something in us has relaxed, when we said, okay, maybe it's okay, these things are there, and something in us relaxed, and there's been kind of a release. What has actually happened is, one can say it's a disidentification from beginning of a disidentification from the body and mind. Remember, Swamiji said yesterday that this shift, this journey is really an inner shift from being totally identified with the body and mind to recognizing ourselves in a higher dimension as the pure sense of I am, where we're unlimited. So when there is that release, it's like there's a disidentification or a surrender of our grip onto our experience. And that grip happens because of our wanting and not wanting. So that's essentially, we can understand that as a beginning of that, and we want to allow that to continue. And as I said, it's a beautiful opportunity to understand, why is it that the I am consciousness is the same? Why is it that the sage is the same? And this we can understand if we really look at what's happening in this experience. What has happened? And actually, from a Vedantic point of view, we really look almost with a laser focus. And it's really looking in our own experience and verifying and confirming in our own experience so it really becomes our own. Vedanta 101. Vedanta 101. Because when we really look and we see in our own experience, when we can confirm that, these states of sattva, which is in line with the truth, peace, love, forgiveness, compassion, those kind of things that are aligned with the truth, or tamas, those things that are not in line with the truth, all the things, anger, lust, greed, the despair we were speaking about yesterday, guilt, all of those things. Whatever they are, Vedanta number 101, they're coming and they're going. They're coming and going. In one sense, they can't be considered real because they're coming and going. And we are here seeing them. We as consciousness are here seeing them. And intuitively, we've always recognized, if it's brought to our attention, that we're not coming and going. We have felt ourselves to be the same being since we were a child. As we get older, we have the sense that we're ageless. So this intuitive feeling, if we start looking, in this more open space, this intuitive feeling can become more alive to us. I am the here, not changing, observing this sattva, rajas, and tamas continuously changing, these different thoughts, sattvic thoughts, tamasic thoughts, coming and going. I can't be those. I am something different. I am the observer of those. Moreover, they are objects to me. I cannot be an object to myself. I am the subject. So this we have to look at over and over again. We all know these words. We all know that these things come and go. We all know we are the unchanging, but it's as if it has to be really rendered in our experience. It has to be so deep, we have to be so convinced that we're never drawn out by these things again. So that practice has to be done over again. That's that very concentrated and focused seeing we have to do over and over again until the conviction becomes very powerful. And of course, this can be done at any time, even when the subject and object are so close, it almost seems like we're one and the same. We can recognize, no, all these experiences are an object to us. They're changing. It's not us. But it's much easier to see when there has been that release. It's much easier to see, but it is meant to be applied under all circumstances. But we can take advantage of this gift from God, this space that's been given to us, to really look. And if we are more of a devotional type, we can also look in another way. We can take what Swamiji said. He said that when he spoke about that darkness, he said, I know he's in the darkness. He is the darkness. From that perspective, just of being I am, that perspective of seeing there, whatever is coming, whether it's sattva, rajas, and tamas, as what Brahmananda Swamiji said, God manifests as sattva, rajas, and tamas. Be reconciled to this and be at peace, so we can see whatever is coming. This is another way, is the manifestation of God. Let God manifest in whatever way he wants. I have the faith. He is omniscient. He is omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He can do anything, and he's all perfect. So let him manifest in any way he wants. So that's another way. And it's through either seeing that he is everything or recognizing I am none of these things. That is the foundation of becoming more and more convinced that I am the I am sense, and becoming stabilized in that. It's the reason that the sage of consciousness is the same no matter what is appearing in consciousness, what is appearing there. So we need to keep on doing this until we become absolutely convinced. And as we say, when we ask the question from this, well, who am I? We don't know. We don't know. I mean, we say the words, I am, but we don't know, because there's no objective content there. And yet at the same time, we know we are here seeing, we know we're here knowing. We just don't know as, and we don't know where we're knowing from. So as I say, we want to become very fixed in this so that eventually we're established and nothing can fool us again. And just if we want to take the yoga of synthesis, and from a Vedantic point of view, look at that devotional way of looking, thinking that everything is appearing as a manifestation of God. From that point of the sense I am, take those two together. Whatever is appearing is a manifestation of God. And from the sense I am, as Swamiji said, that consciousness is the presence of God. So from that sense, and from that perspective of consciousness, we can ask 3 questions just to convince ourselves. Can anything exist outside of that consciousness? Can any of these thoughts, whether they're tamasic or sattvic, can they exist outside of consciousness? Can anything in the world, outer world, exist outside of consciousness? And we really intuitively recognize, no, it's not possible. Nothing can exist outside of consciousness. And when we recognize that, there's a second question we can ask ourselves. From that standpoint, not from consciousness being lost in experience, but from that standpoint, can anything exist independent of consciousness? And we realize, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. If we try and look for anything outside of consciousness, if we kind of look for anything independent of consciousness, it's not possible to find. There's no proof of it. And if there was a proof, we would be there to, as consciousness, to know it. So that's a way of even fixing in our understanding that everything is that, but as ourselves and as God, depending, we can say everything is that as God, or everything is that as our own self. So these are different ways of looking so that we can really become established in this great teaching, liberating teaching as the sage, being the same, no matter whether sattva, rajas, and tamas is present. But how is that? How is this understanding? How is this relevant? How is it connected to our day-to-day life? And as said yesterday, there is a very, very powerful connection, because the more we practice this, the more we know that we are not these ever-changing thoughts and feelings, or that they are all manifestations of God, and we let them go. That means that our attention and our psychic energy is released. When we're concerned about and worried about and involved with what's the content of our mind, a huge amount of our psychic energy, a huge amount of our attention is on those objects, our inner objects. We are only 50%, maybe even less, available to live a full life. Whereas the more we're able to let go of our inner experience, knowing that it's okay, the more our attention, the more our energy is released to be fully engaged in life and this moment. And of course, the more we let go, the more we disidentify from the body and mind, there is more emptiness, the positive spiritual emptiness that is there. And you remember Swamiji said, more than any other scripture, the Gita is a gospel of dynamism, and more than any other scripture, the Gita is a gospel of total surrender. And he said, how that surrender looks, how they coexist. He says, Lord Krishna said to Arjuna, be thee thou an instrument only. So the more we're disidentified from our experience, the more empty we are, the more we become an instrument. And you remember, an instrument in of itself, no matter what the potential of that instrument, in and of itself, it can do nothing. It requires the will, the power, and the intelligence to bring out all the potentiality of that instrument. So we have in the Divine Life Society so many great teachers who demonstrate what that looks like for us when they are pure instruments of that divine power. Their will, their power, they become instruments of that universal divinity. We saw that in Gurudev. We saw that in Swami Chidanandaji. I'm sure all the disciples of Swami Venkateshanandaji and Swami Krishnanandaji and many of Brahmanandaji, all of these great teachers we've been blessed to meet have been beautiful, beautiful models for us of what Swamiji is speaking about when he says, Lord Krishna says, be thou an instrument only. Swamiji, and I remember I've often repeated this, but it's worth saying again, perhaps, that Swamiji asked the question, he wrote a book when he was only 26 called Light Fountain. And he was speaking about Gurudev and his passion for service and how extraordinary his service was. And he asked the question, what was it that enabled Gurudev to do what he could do? and so beyond the capacity of the normal human being. And Swamiji said about Gurudev, he could not think of himself. And similarly, of course, I remember my father saying about Swami Chidananda when it was after he returned home from his first 18 months, he returned back to Vancouver, 18 months in India. And he said to me, you know, having spent this time, so much time with Swamiji, he says, you know, Swamiji accomplishes more in one day than any normal person can accomplish in 1 year. So this is what happens, and this is what we observe when this disidentification and total fixation on the body and mind is completely released. And I feel that most of us have probably experienced this, where we really feel, you know, I'm not doing, God is doing, only it's limited. Certainly artists, many artists will feel, you know, whether they're a musician or a painter or a writer or any other artist will feel when they're in their art and they're creating, they feel, I'm not doing anything. It's some other power that's working. But that can happen in all aspects, in science, in sports, and no matter, in any profession, it can happen that way. And even, I'll tell you, it was my own experience in doing perhaps what would be considered the lowest work one could do. And many of you at least would know that I'm involved in trying to do something about the garbage in this very holy area of Tapovan and Laxmanjula. And I remember before I really got involved, I almost felt it was like a spiritual force coming up and saying, something has to be done about the garbage in this holy area. Talking about the Gita, you know, Lord Krishna says, of streams, I am the Ganga. Of unmovable objects, I am the Himalayas. It's the altar of God here. So it was like something was saying, something has to clean this altar of God. And when something inside responded to that, from that moment, which was perhaps almost 15 years ago, I began to feel there is some other force that is carrying this project. And the proof of it is that nobody in their right mind, certainly no ego, and certainly no ego in its right mind, would ever do this, because all egos want results, and all egos want things that are easy. On the other hand, this project has been either in survival mode or in crisis mode since its inception. And and of course, on top of that, there are no perceivable results. So what would enable one? I mean, no ego could do that. So it has to be being carried by some other power. I would call it the power of love in action. And Lord Krishna said, we must act without sense of doership or the desire for the fruit. So, of course, there's been no fruit of this action, not, at least not according to the standards of this person. No fruit, no tangible results. So where does the satisfaction come from? Because as Swami Padmanabhananda says, we're doing everything for happiness. And so there's nothing in the results to give happiness. So what is it that enables one to carry on? And I think I've discovered it is aligning, the satisfaction comes not from anything outer, but simply aligning one's will with the cosmic will. That's where the satisfaction comes. It's always in the present moment, you might say. So the only thing is, for most of us, and certainly my own experience is that this is limited. It's not 100% of the time, as we might see in Swami Chidananda or Gurudev. It's limited to a particular experience. And as long as ego is there, it can start to encroach and it starts to show its face. And usually if I've spoken about this project, I've spoken about how ego is encroached. I haven't spoken about this other aspect of it. So we want to keep on and on. That's why the practice is so important, to become established in that place where we're the same no matter what. But as I say, the most beautiful manifestation of being able to let go of all personal experience is that all our attention, our energy is free to live fully in this world, to do whatever is at hand. Our full attention is there rather than only half of it. But that's maybe one of the most beautiful ways. But are there other ways? Because sometimes, we are so burdened with life, so overwhelmed by life, that liberating verse that I shared with you may not mean anything. And there's so many other ways as well. So are there other ways that we can look at this and experience the same thing? And I would say definitely yes. And I'd like to share a couple of other approaches. One its origin came right from when I first came to India for a visit in 1978. And before I came, I knew nothing about ego. I knew nothing about Vedanta. I knew nothing about God alone is. But I did have just a simple faith that whatever happens is the will of God and it is for our best. That little faith I had. And when I came to the ashram and I saw this huge book on my father's desk, Swami Amritarupanandaji's desk, called the Bhagavad Gita. And it was a huge volume put out by the Ramakrishna Mission. And it was huge because one of the Swamis from the Ramakrishna, he did a very, very exhaustive commentary on all the verses of the Gita. But in addition to that, he included teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, who, as you all know, is just a great, he's a giant in Indian spiritual history. So there were many, throughout this book, there were many teachings of Sri Ramakrishna as well. And there was one particular one that just leaped off the page to me. And this is what it said. And this is puts us exactly in the same place as we were talking about before. He said, when egoism vanishes, I didn't understand that part, it was the next part. When egoism vanishes, all sorrow and suffering vanishes. But then he said, and this is what was so important, when the individual soul becomes fixed in the conviction that nothing happens except by the will of God, that he is a mere instrument in his hands, liberation is assured in this very birth. So that leapt off, part of the verse I didn't understand, but what leapt off the page was when the soul becomes fixed in the conviction that nothing happens except by the will of God, liberation is assured in this very birth. So I, of course, did not understand the depth of that, and I didn't understand the vanishing of ego either. But I never forgot this. This was something I read way back in 1978. Now, some may kind of feel some resistance to this, everything being the will of God. What about all the horrible things? And or one can get very confused about it. Well, if everything is the will of God, where does my will come in? You know, what is God doing? What am I doing? And there can be tremendous confusion over that. And you know, if my whole spiritual life is God's will, then maybe I shouldn't be making any effort. So there is a lot of kind of confusion. As Swami Brahmananda says, it's only when we recognize one alone is and start to recognize that can be reconciled. But at any rate, another way of misunderstanding that is, well, if everything is God's will, I can do as I like. And as Brahmananda said, well, yeah, the jailer is also God's will, and so is the policeman and all of that. But how that would look, how that really looks, I'd like to share with you a story, a real life story with that my father and I had with Swami Chidanandaji. And this goes back, way back to mid-80s. And this is the story. So my father, he'd been here 11 years, and I had been here 5 years at the time. And all of a sudden, we received an unexpected letter that, if it was not resolved, could radically change the course of our life. But the moment we got it and we read that letter, something in us said, well, this could not be happening except by the will of God. But we, of course, did not know what to do. And so we went to Swami Krishnanandaji. Swami Chidanandaji was not here. So Swami Krishnanandaji said, look, you're here because of Swami Chidanandaji. He's your guru. So you're here because of him. He says, you really need to take this to him. Now, I just wanted to give you some background on this. This was the middle of June in Rishikesh. It is by far the worst weather-wise month of the year, because there is still the May heat that hasn't really cooled down, but the humidity from the pre-monsoon has walked in. So it is extremely hot and humid. As I say, it's perhaps one of the most unpleasant months of the year. And those of you who know Swami Chidanandaji know that he served until almost collapse. In other words, until he was too exhausted that he couldn't move another muscle. So we all know that about Swamiji. Another thing about Swamiji is that he could not take the heat. His body, he was more like an Eskimo. So he couldn't take the heat. So in this exhausted state and being in the heat in Rishikesh, he had just left the ashram to go to Gangotri, which most of you know, and especially at that time, was the source of the Ganga. Now, of course, it's Gumukha, maybe it's even receded further. But so he had gone to Gangotri. He had just left either 1 or 2 days earlier. And those of you who have been to Uttarkashi or been to Gangotri know what kind of trip that is. It's a very long, it's a very arduous trip going on winding mountain roads. And very often what they used to do is they would break the trip and spend one night in Uttarkashi. So Swamiji had just left to go to Gangotri for a very, very needed rest. So that's just to give you a little background. At any rate, back to Swami Krishnanandaji arranged for a taxi for my father and I to go see Swamiji in Gangotri. So we arrived after, I think it's about a 12-hour trip. I can't remember exactly how long it is. We arrived there and Swamiji was waiting for us as usual in total serenity. And we showed him the letter and we said to Swamiji, we realize that this could not be happening except by the will of God. And then Swamiji said, he immediately said, you are describing Swami Chidananda. And then he said, you know, I thought my idea is that you would always be in Gurudev's ashram for life. But that may not be the will of God. We don't know. So even there was a question mark. And then I must have said something that just had a tinge of fatalism in it. And Swamiji says that is not the correct way of understanding that everything is the will of God. He says, all we know now is that it is the will of God that you receive this letter and the contents of what this letter is. It is the will of God that you are sitting in front of me right now. That's what we know. That's all we don't know anything else, because God really only gives light for the next step in ration units for the next step. So we don't know. We only know in the present moment, this is the will of God. And then Swamiji said, and keep in mind, he had just arrived in Gangotri, barely got settled. He would have not had any chance to get over any of the exhaustion he felt, except for perhaps the joy of getting out of the heat. But he said, tomorrow we will take the taxi back to Rishikesh and I'm coming with you. And I will do what I can at my level, and I will guide you to do what at your level to resolve this problem. And so the next day we all went back down to Rishikesh, and Swamiji remained there for 2 weeks in that heat until he felt satisfied that he had done whatever could be done. And at the level that my father and I had to work at, that went on for 8 months, doing whatever we could do at our level until the problem was resolved. So that gives an idea of what it looks like when, as Swamiji says, when we said it couldn't be happening by the will of God, and Swamiji said, you're describing Swami Chidananda. See, there is this, you know, if an ego was responding, they say, my God, I just got here, I'm exhausted. What are you two coming up here and disturbing me already? I only got here. But look at it. He immediately responded. There was not a trace of resistance. He immediately responded. He says, I'm going back down with you. And he, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. So there was that not knowing and an immediate response to the need of the moment. So that gives an idea of what that can look like and how beautiful it is. We're just totally open for the present moment and responding to the present moment. Now for us, that just gives an idea of what it looks like. But for us, what can it look like from a practical point of view? So Lord Krishna, I think, repeatedly says, you must act, but act, you must do your duty. This is what has been repeated to us over and over again by other speakers, but without sense of doership or the desire for the fruit of your action or concern for the outcome of the action. So we know that that is one of the most essential teachings of the Gita. So I really believe, and I think this has been reiterated by the other speakers, I really believe that our whole life can be converted to karma yoga. Our whole life can be converted. We have so many different duties. We have a duty to our family. We have a duty to our occupation. We have a duty to our community. We have a duty to our country. We have a duty to the environment. We have a duty to our maker, to our spiritual life. All these things we have a duty to. So, Lord Krishna, we must do our duty without sense of doership and desire for the truth. So how do we apply everything is the will of God to that? And one way of doing that is that we do our duty to the best of our ability. We fulfill whatever is required to do our duty within the boundaries of living a moral, ethical life, and the desire for liberation, because we're all here for liberation. So within those two boundaries, live a full life, fulfilling all duties, including our sadhana, including even recreation, those things that we enjoy doing, including all that. Do all of it, but to align ourselves with the fact that everything is the will of God. Have at the core of our being an ongoing prayer. Not my will, but thy will be done. In the morning when we wake up, before we get involved with fulfilling all our duties, including our sadhana, not my will, but thy will be done. At the end of the day, not my will, but thy will be done. And throughout the day, when it comes into our mind, that prayer, not my will, but thy will be done, because these two can coexist. It is an inner attitude, an inner prayer at the core of our being that informs everything else, but we can live fully. When we have that inner prayer ongoing, whenever we think of it, morning and night, and when we think of it, see, it flattens the ego. Lord Krishna says, do it without sense of doership. It aligns us automatically with the will of God, because we flatten the ego when we say, not my will, but thy will be done. And of course, automatically, we're not concerned about the outcome. So we're doing our very best. We're living to the fullest to fulfill our duties, whatever they are. And yet at the same time, we can live the teaching of the Gita and align ourselves. It's an aligning ourselves. It's really a remembrance. It's a way of remembering that nothing happens except by the will of God. And the great Ramakrishna assures us that when we become fixed in that conviction that liberation is assured for us in this very birth. And of course, our life will become beautiful because it'll be open and free. So that is perhaps another way that it can be done in our life, the Gita teaching in our life. It's a little secondhand because it comes from Sri Ramakrishna, but at any rate, there is a third way that came into my mind. Say we can't relate to this devotional way of speaking, that everything is the will of God, and not my will, but thy will be done. And, we're so overwhelmed. We just can't relate to, being the same no matter what our experience is. So is there another way that we can live the Gita teaching? And I would say, yes, there is another way. And this is what occurred to me. No matter what, no matter who we are, we can take some of the teachings of the Gita, like Lord Krishna, he says many, many times throughout the Gita, I am the self of all beings. He sees, who sees me equally in all beings. And of course, that includes us also. And Lord Krishna says, I am the self of all beings. Of course, that includes us also. And he also says, when he describes a sage, so many different ways he's described a sage, but one of the ways is a sage is intent on the welfare of all beings. So take these two together, put these two together, and we can think about converting our whole life to service, to seva. Whatever we're doing, whatever our duty is doing, instead of ourselves, number one, the other in the form of God, or in the form of our own self, becomes number one. So, and this is not so difficult. It's very natural in the family setup. It's very natural that we serve the family. So that same family feeling we can extend to the whole world. We can extend to our workplace. We can extend to our community. We can extend to our country. We can extend to the world. But right down to our own duties, we can think of ways and means that it can be converted. Rather than I'm doing it for myself, the first thing I'm thinking about is the other. But to bring it up to a spiritual level, we're serving God in the other, or we're serving ourselves. Now that this is possible, I'd like to give two examples, because one may think, oh my God, I don't have the time for this, or to think that way, or whatever. So I'd just like to share a couple of examples that had a huge impact on me to show, to really prove that this is possible. One example is a former president of the United States. And you know how busy and how involved and engaged a president of the United States would have to be. Anyways, my father, Swami Amritarupananda and I were very inspired by this particular president. And we used to listen to so many of his speeches. One of the reasons we were inspired is there was definitely a spiritual quality about this man. And we began to see why. When we listened to his speeches, there used to be one sentence, one small sentence that used to occur in almost all of them. Whether he was in the international forum and giving a speech to the United Nations, whether he was on the domestic front giving a speech on the economy, this one sentence kept on reappearing. And that was, you must be able to see yourself in the other. And that seemed to be the motivating force of his life. And it certainly was perhaps the reason we found him so inspiring. This man, he got into politics in the first place because he was moved by the suffering of others and wanted to find better and better ways that he could serve these people to help others. So I suppose if the president of the United States can do it, so can we. And just by the way, an interesting add-on to this is that he was asked once, if you could have tea with any leader of the world, past and present, who would you have tea with? And you know what he said? Mahatma Gandhi, the father of this great nation that I'm in right now. And whose teachings we're all inspired by. So that is one extreme example. Another extreme example is an ordinary shopkeeper. We all know shopkeepers, especially in India, they have the reputation of only being interested in money. Service is not their prime goal in life, but making money. But I remember my father and I, we wanted to buy a big appliance, and we asked a friend, is there anybody trustworthy that we could buy this from? And so this man was recommended. So we went to him, and we already felt, he was very caring, and we felt a trust. But what really became amazing was when we were running into problems with this particular appliance, he went so far beyond the call of duty to serve that I realized, boy, if the President of the United States can convert everything into service, if through seeing himself in the other, and an ordinary shopkeeper can do it, then all of us, this is something that we can do. And sometimes spiritual seekers are a little bit hesitant about service because they say, well, the ego is going to come in there. And the Gita has a teaching for that. And I'll share another little story from Swami Chidanandaji. One evening, my father was down visiting with Swamiji. They were walking on the rooftop of Guru Nivas, where Swamiji lived in the ashram. And Swamiji happened to echo one of the teachings of the Gita. He said, whatever you do, offer it to God. And my father said, because he couldn't quite relate to those words, and many of us may not, especially if we come from a Western background, we may not be able to quite understand those words. So my father said, well, I prefer to universalize it. And Swamiji immediately said, same thing. So in order to remove any possible ego there, as Lord Krishna says, act without sense of doership, to remove that, even while we're thinking of ways and means that we can serve in all aspects, how we can convert our present actions to seva, whatever it is, we can see, just look and see that even the impulse to think in that way just appeared. And if there's a will to act, that will, no matter what, is just appearing. What did we do as an individual for these thoughts to come? What did we do as an individual for that will to come? The will to do it just appears. And the power to act, the power to serve appears. And certainly the intelligence to utilize whatever potentiality is there, which is, we didn't do anything for the potentiality either. So we can begin to see, just by looking, just by simple looking, that in fact, already our actions are universal. So my father said, Swamiji says, whatever you do, offer it to God. But when my father said, I prefer to universalize it, you see, we can see that our actions already are universal actions, because when we really look as individuals, the very will to act just comes. Our thought, we don't know what the next thought is going to be. The thought and the thought process for action just appears. The power to act appears, and the intelligence just appears. So already our actions are universalized. And if it's a universal action and it's done for the welfare of all, then we don't need to be concerned about the outcome. It is the concern of the universal. So that is another way that the Gita teaching, the liberating Gita teachings, can be applied in our daily life. Har Jung, that's that.